into number 9, we have the Roswell UFO incident that took place in 1947. Take a look at this. This came crashing down to Earth, and if you search this into Google, you can find these images as well. Clearly looks like an alien, and also you can see more UFO pictures. Can this really be a UFO crash site? Well, there are obviously many conspiracy theories around this crash, because the US military stated that it is a United States Army Air Force balloon crash, while others say that this might be one huge cover-up and it's actually an alien spacecraft. What do you guys believe? I'm going with it might be an alien spacecraft. And at number 8, we have a piece of the moon. It's always scarier taking pieces of the moon because you just never know what type of airborne bacteria can live on it. There was actually a lunar meteorite found in northern Africa not too long ago, and just a tiny piece of it sold for more than $600,000. Imagine a piece of the moon just fell into your backyard, making you instantly a millionaire. There hasn't been a long-term human exposure to the lunar environment, but apparently the exposure to lunar dust can actually result in severe health risks from direct exposure or exposure from over time. So saying that, whoever owns a piece of the moon, hopefully they're keeping it well contaminated. Alright, number 7, you guys saw it in the intro of this video, you saw a little clip of it, but let's talk about the 2017, which was not too long ago. Well, I'm talking about the discovery of the Oumuamua, which was the first interstellar object ever detected in our solar system. Oumuamua, hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. Probably not, but in Hawaiian, it actually translates to first-time visitor from far away. Of course, when this object was made public, millions of people questioned, is it aliens? Others ask, where did it come from, or what does this mean for us? Could this be an invasion on Earth? Well, scientists from Harvard University believe yes. This could actually be signs of alien civilization. When you hear about a bold claim like that, coming from Harvard scientists, it actually makes you wonder. When Oumuamua traveled through our solar system, it actually didn't travel on a normal path. And as you know, as normal objects would travel in, and it's usually due to the sun's gravity, but instead it made its own path. So it makes us think maybe this thing was powered by some sort of thrusters. So it could be plausible that it was a spacecraft. Number 6, we have a satellite that fell to Earth. Have you guys heard the story of the Cosmos 954? Well, me neither. I had to do the research for this one. Well, back on January 24th in 1978, a Soviet satellite malfunctioned, which prevented a safe separation of its onboard nuclear reactor, so pieces of the Cosmos entered Earth, shattering around northern Canada. Now, this is pretty messed up. Luckily, no one was killed by this. Just imagine if like North Korean satellite crashed on American soil. I mean, that might spark World War III. So there's actually a law that everyone has to follow when it comes to space. So under the terms of the 1972 Space Liability Convention, whoever launched an object into outer space is liable for damages caused by that object. So saying that, the Canadian government billed the Soviet Union over $6 million for the cost of the cleanup and also for additional compensation for future unpredicted expenses. But the USSR paid just $3 million. From a failed USSR satellite to something that you would never expect coming from space, or should I say you wouldn't expect someone coming from space. An alien? Okay, let me take you guys over to Mongolia, and at number 4. There was this 2-ton object that crashed to the Earth near the Mongolian capital back in 2019. This object was added to the MUFON Witness database, which is actually the UFO Network database. I didn't know there was a UFO database. How many aliens are on it? So people are actually believing this foreign object might be a UFO. The object looks like it has a rocket or a jet engine. It seems like the object came crashing down in a field of cows and no one knows what it is. On Reddit, people believed that it might be a hydrogen tank, and a lot of people think that this picture might actually be fake because one person pointed out, where's the crater that a heavy and large object would create? I mean, that is a pretty valid point. It's time to time travel for a sec. In at number 3, let me take you guys back like 80,000 years ago. I know it's a long time. And let's talk about the Dropa meteorite that came crashing down on Earth. It wasn't until 1920 when a farmer found it on his field. Well, this thing weighs 60 tons, and it is known to be the largest known meteorite to be found. Today, it has been turned into a national monument, so now it's a great tourist attraction. Finally, number 1, I saved the scariest for last. NASA actually predicts that in 2023, there's going to be an asteroid that is on a collision course with Earth that can do some pretty serious damage. The asteroid is twice the size of Big Ben, and I looked up Big Ben, and Big Ben is massive. And then imagine Big Ben, and then times it by 2, and then adding like fire all around it. That can ruin a whole city. Imagine if that hit like a dense city like New York, or what about if it hit like Shanghai, China? A population of over 24 million people. That can wipe out everyone. My biggest question right now is, how accurate is NASA? I'm hoping that they're not too accurate. But then again, if NASA wasn't accurate, I don't know if that would be more scarier.
Now, number 10, a Pluto slug. Some people say Pluto isn't a planet or just a main planet anymore, just a dwarf planet. And to that, I say, no, Pluto is a real planet in my heart, okay? Anyways, on to what really matters. In 2016, NASA's New Horizons spacecraft got some nice pics of an icy region on Pluto's surface. If you look at the picture, there's like a little black formation in the center, and behind it is a trail. So it looks like a little slug has been making its way across the icy terrain, carving its own little path, making its way through this just desolate space. No, okay, I'm not crying because it's actually a slug, because it probably isn't. The scientists are saying it's likely a dirty block of water ice floating in a denser solid of nitrogen, so not a slug, but like it looks like it. It still is a mystery on what exactly it is, because that's more a hypothesis, you could say, but it's probably not a slug. But it doesn't stop me from thinking, like, doesn't that sound like a nice children's book or something? The slug on Pluto. It'd be so cute. That's all I'm thinking. On to number 9, the Mars spoon? Question mark? So this is a much closer planet than Pluto, who is still a planet in my heart. So this is Mars. So on a photo captured by the beloved NASA Curiosity rover, you can see what looks like a spoon, possibly? Like, it looks like a spoon, honestly. There's a handle, check. Mini concave element on the end of the handle, also check. Yes, it just looks like it's covered in dust because it's on the surface of Mars, which is, you know, a red, dusty planet, but spoon, nonetheless. This was spotted by a YouTube user called UFO Hunter, which led to more people kind of agreeing and being like, yeah, it looks kind of like a spoon. From then on, more people were questioning, just like, yo, where did this spoon come from? Was a Martian eating an ice cream sundae before an entire Martian race was just wiped out? And so that's kind of what UFO Hunter was thinking, saying it may be left over from a lost civilization, but we could just be projecting our ideas onto a clump of space dust, honestly. What if it's one of those things where you just touch it and it crumbles? Could be. I don't know. At number 8, fish rock. Is this another thing we could just be projecting? This fish-looking thing spotted on Mars is probably just a rock, but we gotta remember, Mars once had an ocean even bigger than the Arctic Ocean. And even if it could be a rock, and probably is a rock, look at the similarities to a fish. An upturned nose, a fin, and even a finned tail too. Have I ever caught a fish? No. And have I tried? Yes, but if I did catch one, I bet it would look like this, and I bet it would also be a rock that I was trying to convince people was a fish. But let's move on to number 7, face on Jupiter. So yes, let's hop on over to another planet, our big one in our solar system, the big old gas giant Jupiter. And now this image shows what looks like a derpy looking face on the gas giant. It even has a lovely name. Wait for it. Jovi McJupiter face. Very nice, very cute. So this face was awarded that beautiful name by Jason Major, a citizen scientist who rotated a photo that NASA took. Now, NASA's Juno spacecraft sent down an unaltered photo, and Major was like, nah. Let's interpret these 2 storms as eyes and the wider swirling red part as a mouth, which is genius. Now, Jovi McJupiter face obviously shows we can see the beauty in art, in anything, in nature and life. So now the next section that we're going to be talking about is staying within the realm of our solar system, but going a little closer, a little smaller. So let's take a peek at the moons we have. So at number 6 we have Ravioli Moon. This delectable little treat of a moon is one of Saturn's moons. Its name is Pan, and yes, it looks like a little treat of ravioli. And ravioli gets tossed in a pan with butter or oil, right? Does that blend the 2 names together enough for you? Connections. Fun. Anyways, the reason it looks like the pasta is because material from Saturn's rings falls onto Pan's equator, and the buildup results in the really unique buildup on the equator that makes me think, you know, ravioli. But maybe if you don't have food on the brain, you may think Pan looks more like a flying saucer, and in that case, right on. But for me, ravioli. On to number 5, Death Star Moon. The second and last of our honorable moon mentions is Mimas, or Mimas, aka the Death Star Moon. Now this is another of Saturn's many moons, and this one garners a few more eyes because of its similarities to the Death Star from Star Wars. And you know, the big dish on the Death Star? Boom, big crater on Mimas. Is this really the Death Star in disguise? Probably not, since it's been orbiting Saturn for a bit, plus that idea was mainly for a fictional universe. Also mainly, this moon is really big. So Mimas is 396 kilometers in diameter, and the first Death Star and second Death Star were both between 160 and 140 kilometers in diameter. So if you're thinking, yeah, but what about the third Death Star? Well, that one's too big, measuring about 900 kilometers in diameter, so it's not that one either. So it's not the Death Star in disguise, so you can, you know, exhale and breathe a little bit. But it is a cool looking moon, so yep. Okay, so next up is not only out of this world, but also out of this solar system. The next 3 we have are nebulas, which, if you don't know, are super cool on their own, even if they don't look like anything in particular, but these next 3 have the added X factor of looking just really cool. At number 4, we have Horsehead Nebula. So this first nebula we're looking at was captured by the Hubble Space Telescope back in 2013. The stunning nebula got the nickname Horsehead Nebula because of its looks. Think back to cloud watching when you were younger and seeing the shapes in them, and you can see that this nebula looks like the head and neck of a horse in this image with the nose of the horse facing the left. And unfortunately, we can't pay this little horsey a visit because it's about 1,500 light years away from the Orion constellation. And for reference, Orion's constellation is 243 to 1,360 light years away from us, so little ways away, but you can still admire it for its beautiful looks. This next one, number 3, is Space Crab. And so this one is quite a ways further. It's about 6,500 light years away from Earth, and it's the Crab Nebula. Now, let's look a bit more at this 5-layered composite image of this bad boy. So the composite image, it looks like something out of a movie. 1, stunning. And then again, 2, the colors, magnificent, such range. Do I sound like I'm impersonating Jonathan Van Ness? Yes. It looks like an artist made it. It's beautiful. And yes, this nebula is called the Crab Nebula because the range of its legs, so it said, but others have also compared these outstretchings to an octopus's tentacles. And so if you're having a hard time seeing these legs or arms that I'm talking about, look mainly at the pink sections and a little bit at the yellow, and I find it helps you paint a picture of what you're looking at. I am the nebula. On to another nebula, the Twin Jet Nebula, also known as a space butterfly. So this cosmic butterfly looking thing is actually a 2-lobed nebula. It has the official name PNM2-9, and it was originally spotted back in 1947. It's more commonly known as the Twin Jet Nebula because really it looks like 2 jets coming out of the back of a rocket ship colliding into one another, and then the blasts radiating outwards. I feel like you could even argue it's 2 pop bottles head to head shrouded in like a green atmosphere. But then if you look right in the center, I say it looks like a fairy from Legend of Zelda, which looks a bit like a butterfly. So that's where you get the name Cosmic Butterfly. Mystery solved. The Twin Jet Nebula is obviously a fairy from Legend of Zelda. You're welcome. So our number 1 is the D&D asteroid. And obviously this one is my number 1 because I am a gamer. A tabletop role-playing gamer, that is. Asteroid 2017 BQ6 has been compared to dice used in playing Dungeons & Dragons and also other tabletop games because of its angular shape. And you kind of have to know that this is kind of odd because most planets and stuff around space is rounded. Kind of looks like a bunch of either spheres or just potatoes passing through. And so this asteroid passed from a distance of about 1.6 million miles away, but it didn't, you know, land anywhere like dice usually do. And like, if you think about it, there's already enough people thinking we are living in a simulation. But guys, what if we live in a game? One of their dice in the great unknown fell into space, and now they're laughing at us because we rolled a natural 1 on perception. A simulation game. You're thinking The Sims, I'm thinking they're just dictating each of our lives with dice rolls. It's all up to random. Who knows?
Number 10. Spaceballs. Over the course of decades, humans have begun to clog up the Earth's surrounding area with space junk. Defunct projects, satellites, broken or discarded pieces of spacecrafts. It will become a serious problem at some point, and it's beginning to show. There have been many instances now of strange metallic balls crashing into the ground and being found in multiple countries: Mexico, Spain, Vietnam, Namibia, Australia, and many others. They hurtle towards the Earth, and some have crashed a little too close for comfort. Most of these mysterious objects seem to just be auxiliary fuel tanks from satellites that were discarded or crashed nearby, and they fell off early, landing in a completely different place than was planned. But some of these, like the one in Mexico, still require more investigation, as they don't match any of the parts that we would have expected to be entering our atmosphere. This one even has an antenna, and reportedly fell from the sky while making strange noises, but was not accompanied by any fire, like a lot of debris entering the atmosphere would have. So where did these things come from then? Number 9. WTF. In 2013, the Catalina Sky Survey at the University of Arizona spotted an object in the night sky, and it seemed to have some weird properties. The object didn't move as though it was solid like rock, but it seemed to possibly be hollow, and it had a density of about 10% that of water, and it seemed to be about 6.5 feet in diameter, large enough to house a person. But this didn't match any of the space junk that space agencies had been tracking for the previous years, and adding even more to the confusion, the object seemed to disappear from sight, and it was not seen again until 2 years later when it was officially given the name WT1190F, or WTF for short. Pretty fitting. Video and photos were taken of the object's re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, which was a scientific feat on its own, but the object was never recovered. It is assumed that it burned up from the immense heat of re-entry, but many people believe that it crashed into the ocean and whatever was inside was either captured or lies in wait at the bottom of the sea, like those UFOs NASA admits that they found. Remember those? That was crazy. Number 8. Struck by a space rock. Alright, we've got 2 stories here, and you can either think of them as the result of a curse, or karma, or cosmic coincidence, but either way, these 2 women had a bad day. In 2001, Lottie Williams was exercising in a park in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when she looked up and saw a great ball of fire in the air. It was a rocket coming back towards Earth. She watched it approach, and as it got larger in the sky, she expressed her worry to her friends, but then it broke up into pieces and it was no longer visible to her. A few moments later, she felt what she described as a tap on her shoulder, and then something fell to the ground. This small blackened piece of metal had fallen from the rocket and just grazed her, and it could have been a lot worse, but she walked away being the first person to be hit by man-made space debris. But another woman was not as lucky. On November 30th, 1954, Ann Hodges was napping in her Alabama home when a piece of meteorite crashed through her roof and struck her in the side. It left a 3-foot wide hole in her roof and also left a massive bruise on her thigh and hand where she was hit. Luckily, the damages were only surface level, and though she went to the hospital the next night, it was because of her stress, not the injury. But if the space rock had been a few inches to the side, Ann would not have lived to tell the tale as the first person to be struck by a meteorite. I'm not sure if she's cursed with extremely bad luck or has really good luck. I'll leave that up to you. Number 7. Skylab. Launched by NASA as the first American space station, Skylab was cursed with issues from the moment it launched. The station strapped to a Saturn V rocket sustained severe damage during its deployment, including the loss of the station's micrometeoroid shield and one of its main solar panels, requiring it to have the first ever repair to an object in space, which is pretty cool. But it was again hit with problems when one of the pieces destabilized from orbit earlier than expected and crashed back to Earth. But it doesn't stop there. Due to increased solar activity, Skylab actually ended up falling towards Earth a year earlier than it was supposed to. There was supposed to be a shuttle mission to boost it back into orbit, but the shuttle wasn't ready in time. In an international media frenzy, the Skylab crash was everywhere. People had shirts with targets, contests were made to bring pieces of the wreckage for cash prizes, and people waited for the show. Due to a 4% calculation error on re-entry, the station did not burn up as quickly as expected, and pieces fell into Australia only 300 miles from Perth in an almost completely unpopulated area. Man, talk about a crash and burn. These scientists missed the mark so many times it's impressive the thing even hit Earth. Number 6. 300 million year old machine part. In 2013, a Russian man named Dmitry was adding coal to a fire when he noticed something strange. A shiny piece of metal was sticking out of the rock, and when he broke open the piece of coal, he found what seemed to be a piece of a metal bar with teeth, like a piece of a gear. When analyzed, it was found to be made of aluminum with about 3% magnesium, an alloy that is not generally produced today. Not only that, but further examination shows machining marks, implying that it's a man-made piece, and it's similar to those that we may find in a modern microscope or other small machinery. But no one can explain how a seemingly man-made part appears in a piece of coal that was 300 million years old. So was this thing a remnant of a past unknown civilization? Maybe something from a time traveler or alien? One explanation is that it could have fallen to Earth from a meteorite all that time ago, but it wouldn't explain the fact that it seems man-made. This little hunk of metal continues to baffle scientists today. Number 5. Nuclear nuisance. The Cosmos 954 reconnaissance satellite launched by the Soviet Union in 1977 had some major issues. The launch went fine. Unlike Skylab, its deployment also went off without a hitch, and this long-term orbital satellite seemed like another mission success for the Soviet space program. It was meant to be circling the globe for years and years, but just 3 months later, the North American Aerospace Defense Command noticed the satellite making erratic maneuvers, changing the altitude of its orbit by up to 50 miles. And in secret meetings, the Soviet officials warned their US counterparts that they had lost control over the vehicle, and the system, which was intended to propel the spent nuclear reactor core into a safe disposal orbit, had failed. And just 4 months after its launch, it fell towards the Earth, right over Canada's Northwest Territories. The Soviets claimed that it had completely disintegrated upon re-entry, but that was not the case, as we discovered a 600-kilometer path of debris leading through the country. And a huge portion of it was radioactive because they failed to launch the reactor out. We Canadians began Operation Morning Light, a recovery effort that lasted over a year and for which we billed the Soviet Union $6 million, though they only ever paid us $3 million. Many small pieces of debris were collected, as well as 12 large portions of the satellite, only 2 of which were not radioactive. Number 4. Proof of panspermia. The theory of panspermia is that life did not naturally begin on Earth, but that it began with microbes stuck in space ice that fell to Earth on meteorites, and the amount of debate around this topic is huge, and we have a few examples that may just prove the theory. The Polonnaruwa meteorite was one that fell in Sri Lanka in 2012, and meteorites are always a good find, but this one was different. 12 days after it was witnessed falling through the sky, a scientist published a paper stating that after studying some electron micrographs, his team discovered fossilized diatoms, microscopic phytoplankton, inside the meteorite. In addition, his team of scientists reported in a separate article that they are certain that it is a meteorite that originated from a comet that also contained living diatoms. The microbes were remarkably similar to those found on Earth, leading to a debate on whether it was simply contaminated from the Earth's surface. But there is another example with even stronger proof of microscopic alien life. In 2018, a meteorite landed on a frozen lake in Michigan, and when it was examined, thousands of organic compounds that were formed billions of years ago were found. It helped that the quick recovery, along with the cold temperature, kept the water inside frozen for studying. Research is still being done, but this find has thrown the scientific world for a loop. Hopefully the organisms don't leave us with some alien curse or disease. Number 3. The Chelyabinsk meteor. Many of us will remember the 2013 meteor that rocked the world. At 20 meters in diameter, it was the largest natural object to enter our atmosphere since the Tunguska event, which destroyed a wide, remote, forested, and very sparsely populated area of Serbia. The Chelyabinsk meteor also is the only meteor confirmed to have resulted in many injuries, though they were all from indirect causes. There are many videos of the event, and they are truly terrifying, especially when you learn that the meteor was completely undetected until it entered our atmosphere, which caused worldwide panic. The flash as it began to burn up was brighter than the sun, and when it exploded midair, the energy output was equivalent to the atomic weapon used on Hiroshima, sending out a massive shockwave that damaged buildings and was felt and heard for hundreds of miles. All of the 1,500 people injured were hurt while running or from broken glass or other indirect factors of the meteor. There was even another meteor which was detected to have a close approach on the same day, which was 10 meters larger and flew by us only 16 hours later. Man, February 15th, 2013 was a busy day for meteors. And finally, we reach our number 1, the Hypatia stone. The Hypatia stone is one of the single greatest astronomical discoveries that we have ever made. Found in the Sahara Desert by Ali A. Barakat, this is no ordinary meteorite, but one that contains the remnants of a rare type of supernova. Some have even described it as a supernova in a bottle. Named after the ancient mathematician and astronomer Hypatia, who was the first female scholar in her field to have her life and accomplishments recorded, overcoming sexism in the process, scientists are still learning more about its origins. It's believed that the stone was born in what is known as a Type 1a supernova, a rare kind of supernova where a dying star or white dwarf begins to leech energy off of a nearby star and regains energy in the process. These so-called vampire stars circle each other until the white dwarf has recovered enough energy to reignite the stellar reactions and explodes in a massive cloud of dust and pure energy, shooting things imbued with strange elements out into the ether. Measuring the metals found inside the stone is how we verified that it came from this kind of supernova, and that it crashed to Earth nearly 28 million years ago after being launched through space by the explosion. Having a supernova in our hands has helped us answer so many questions about the physics of space, but if you ask me, if there was one interstellar item that could have an alien curse, it's the rock that contains pieces of a rare supernova. Sounds like something an alien from Doctor Who would need to power their death machine or something.
Starting us off at number 10, the Kaidun Meteorite. While it may not have been the biggest meteorite to crash into the Earth, it certainly raised many questions once it was here. On December 30th, 1980, what looked like a fireball was seen in the sky hurling its way towards the Soviet military base. Now, upon impact, they discovered a surprisingly small stone weighing only about 4 pounds, but it was what was inside the stone that caused a commotion. Inside the meteorite was a wide range of incredibly rare and unique minerals, many of which are not found in nature, causing quite a bit of confusion and debate around the stone's origins. Some scientists believe it originated from the Martian moon of Phobos, but no one really knows for certain. While there have been several meteorites from Mars to land on Earth, if suspicions are true, the Kaidun would be the first Martian moon rock to be found on Earth. And who knows what that could mean. Next up at number 9, a piece of the moon. As fate would have it, a piece of the moon made its way into the desert of Morocco, and in 2014, it was discovered and sold privately to a collector. The moon chunk weighed about 6 pounds and was extremely rare, as very few pieces of lunar material have been known to crash land onto the planet. Now, as cool as this seems, scientists have discovered that moon dust can cause huge health risks, and long-term exposure is highly toxic and has the potential to even cause death. So whoever has this piece of moon rock better have it sealed tight, because it could be the end of them. Next up at number 8, Tomanawos. To understand the craziness of this meteorite, we have to rewind a few billion years. Well, 4.5 billion years to be exact. Meteorites are usually made of iron and nickel. These iron and nickel atoms were formed inside stars that eventually exploded, sending the elements rocketing across the nebula. Over time, the elements were forced together to create what we call protoplanets, which were the first planet-like orbs of the solar system. Now, 4.5 billion years ago, Tomanawos was at the core of one of these protoplanets, but at some point in time likely collided with another protoplanet, sending huge chunks back into space. Then, 17,000 years ago, it crashed down into the Earth and landed on an ice cap in Canada. It wasn't discovered until thousands of years later, and by that time it had made quite the journey down to Oregon. The 15-ton rock caused quite a stir and even a lawsuit when in 1902 a man tried to steal it from the indigenous people and charge others to see the strange and mysterious space rock. But the joke was on him, as the Oregon Iron and Steel Company actually owned the land where he'd found the meteorite and sued for its return. Whatever it was, there was something about this meteorite that drew people in. And who knows, maybe it really was cursed. Next up at number 7, a strange black object. In July of this year, Australian farmer Mike Miners was doing his usual morning survey of his farm when all of a sudden he spotted something that caught his eye. There in the distant part of the grasslands was a large jet black object measuring roughly 9 feet and sticking straight up out of the ground. Unsure of what was going on, he took a closer look at the object and eventually decided to call the Civil Aviation Safety Authority to see if they could help. Once he was on the phone with them, they quickly urged him to call NASA directly. Eventually, it was discovered to be a piece of space junk, likely from the SpaceX Dragon capsule, but many conspiracy theorists didn't seem to buy this answer, believing it to be some kind of remnant from a UFO. And to tell you the truth, I have no idea if those conspiracy theorists are losing their minds or if they are onto something, but anything that is falling from outer space will always freak me out. Coming in at number 6, the microscopic diamond. There are many things people can expect to find falling from the sky, but tiny microscopic space diamonds would not be at the top of my list. Back in 1969, an unexpected meteorite came crashing down into Mexico, which led to one of the biggest manhunts trying to find all the scattered fragments. One of the strange finds were small diamond fragments containing, now stay with me here, isotopic signatures of materials formed prior to the existence of our solar system. Which, listen, I'm not really blessed with much of a science brain, but essentially it's really frickin' crazy what they found. The origins of the diamond is up for debate. There are 2 theories about how they came to be. The first is the formation inside a giant star that long ago exploded in a supernova, and the second is from an asteroid impact in space, but either way, it's an incredibly strange find that raised more questions upon its discovery than it answered. Next up at number 5, a molten object. Maybe it was aliens, or maybe it's some cursed artifact from outer space, but either way, no one had any clue what they'd found. Back in 2016, an inexplicable molten object fell from the sky in Siberia and was actually caught on film. 2 YouTubers said they received the footage from a witnessing Russian man and wasted no time posting the video for all to see. Whatever it was covered in green flames, an unrecognizable white foamy substance, and grabbed the attention of local firemen who can be seen attempting to put out the giant and strange green flames. Many online viewers were quick to try and figure out what exactly they were witnessing, and some said it was probably a satellite that fell onto the earth, but some swear they saw a UFO hovering over Turkey just 3 days prior and believe the object to have been the crashed extraterrestrial ship. Maybe the aliens were trying to send us a message? Let's just hope it was a crashed satellite. Coming in at number 4, fireballs. There are few things that make us worry about the end of days more than giant fire orbs raining down from the sky and terrorizing our planet. Well, in September of 2019, it seemed like just that was happening in Chile when huge and mysterious flaming objects lit up the sky, cascading over the largest island in Chile, horrifying the locals. The fireballs plummeted to the earth and caused 7 bushfires across the island, though luckily no one was injured. Initially, most assumed it was meteorites crashing down, but after a few days inspecting the site, no traces were found at any of the 7 locations. Officials were confused by the findings, as the only other logical explanation would be space debris, but that as well seemed to have been ruled out by many. So if it wasn't a meteorite and it wasn't a rogue piece of space debris, what could have fallen from the sky? Could it have anything to do with an unknown space civilization? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Coming in at number 3, metal shreds. Long before Chile saw the flaming balls of fire crashing down, Argentina was met with an equally terrifying phenomenon. Back in 1991, out of nowhere, giant shards of flaming metal appeared glowing in the sky. The ominous showers appeared to be darting down towards the planet, terrifying the locals. This metallic rain turned out to be fragments from a Russian space station named the Salyut 7, which to this day is still considered to be one of the largest human-made objects to re-enter the atmosphere. Now, of course, engineers made many attempts to guide the fragments toward the Atlantic Ocean, but as the station was in a low orbit to the planet, they were not really able to properly redirect anything. So soon the 88,000 pounds of metal were crashing down to the Earth, and although no one was injured, it certainly terrorized all who witnessed it. Coming in at number 2, Vladimir Komarov. Infamously known as the man who fell from space, Vladimir was a famous Russian astronaut, or cosmonaut as they were called during the Cold War space race. Back in 1967, he embarked on a crazy mission that, although he was completely trained to complete, was ultimately rushed. Allegedly, the spacecraft had a multitude of structural issues, and despite engineers warning the Soviet officials that the craft was not ready, they continued with the mission as planned. Vladimir took off and made his way up into the eternity of space, and even executed 16 orbits around the Earth. But something went awry with his mission, so he was instructed to make his way back down to Earth. However, things went south upon trying to re-enter the atmosphere when his parachute would not engage, and Vladimir plummeted back towards the Earth, crashing in a horrific explosion. Rumor has it that while he was plummeting to his fate, he was screaming at the Soviets for forcing him to do this mission. And while he may not have been something that originated from space, it was certainly cursed from the very beginning of its journey. And last up in our number 1 spot, the Roswell incident. Back in 1947, a huge metallic object crashed down on the Earth, causing a major uproar for conspiracy theorists across the globe. Now, normally I'm not one to jump on the conspiracy wagon, but I don't know how anyone can look me in the eye and tell me that this is not the spinning image of a flying saucer. I mean, come on. Now, here is where it gets crazy. After the dust from the initial sighting settled, the Roswell Air Force released a statement admitting that they had found a flying disc, but then quickly retracted that statement, saying instead it was simply a conventional weather balloon, and have stuck to this story ever since. But this change in description caused many to believe the government was covering up valuable information. Then, in 1979, Lieutenant Jesse Marcel, a key figure in the whole debacle, was interviewed for a documentary about the incident and admitted that despite what they told newspapers in 1947, that he truly believed it was an extraterrestrial entity that was found that day, and that the government had ordered him to keep quiet. Now, that isn't suspicious at all. So what do you guys think? Government weather balloon or top secret alien spaceship?
Starting off this countdown, we have the toxic dirt. Turns out that Mars is covered in toxic chemicals. Sorry Elon, but there goes your plan to make Mars habitable for humans. NASA first figured this out in 2008 when their Phoenix lander landed on Mars and collected some soil samples. They then found out that the soil contains high levels of perchlorate, which is toxic to humans. Even very small amounts of it are considered highly toxic. The substance is known to severely affect our thyroid glands and can disrupt the function of it. So yeah, maybe living on Mars isn't gonna be the best for us. Coming in at number 9, we have space poison. Back in 1969, a man named L. Snyder and his colleagues discovered formaldehyde in space. Formaldehyde is known to cause irritation of the skin, eyes, nose, and throat. High levels of exposure can also cause certain types of cancers. It's a highly toxic and poisonous substance, which is why it was given the name space poison. Coming in at number 8, we have the toxic fungus. Yes, there is fungus in space and it's living all over the International Space Station. Not only that, but when spacecrafts come back from space, they are covered in this fungi as well. A study done of this has declared that it is Aspergillus flavus, which is known to produce carcinogenic and immune suppressing compounds. This fungi is known to form when it's stressed, and obviously space is a very stressful situation, so it's the perfect environment for it to thrive. However, there's still a lot that scientists don't know about it. They are currently studying the toxic effects that it has on astronauts. In our 7th spot, we have ammonia. Now this one is kinda cheating, but I don't care, I'm putting it on this list anyways. One of the deadliest things found in space actually comes from the spacecraft itself, and that's ammonia. Liquid ammonia is used to keep the station's electricity generating solar panels cool. However, ammonia is highly toxic. Astronauts are told by NASA trainers that if they smell ammonia, then there's no point running any procedures because they're just gonna die anyways. Of course, they will still run the procedures because they're not gonna give up hope that fast. Basically, if ammonia gets inside the spacecraft, well, it's hella corrosive and it's a huge irritant to their body. That's why if they're fixing anything outside the craft and get exposed to ammonia, then they have this huge procedure that they need to go through in order to prevent it getting into their craft. In our 6th spot, we have hydrazine. So hydrazine is another chemical that astronauts bring into space with them. Raw hydrazine is used to fuel the shuttle's auxiliary power units, whereas monomethyl hydrazine fuels the shuttle's maneuvering systems. Well, both of these chemicals are flammable and are highly irritating, especially to the eyes, skin, and respiratory system. Upon exposure, they can cause vomiting, diarrhea, tremors, convulsions, and permanent damage to internal organs. How great is that? We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the toxic grease. According to scientists, space is full of dirty toxic grease, but obviously it's not the grease that we're thinking of. Basically, the Milky Way is filled with this fine mist of grease-like molecules. How much, you ask? Well, enough to fill 40 trillion packs of butter. Yeah, that much. And obviously it's highly toxic to us. Scientists compare it to like greasy soot here on Earth. I swear, space just keeps getting more and more interesting and also a little bit scary. In our 4th spot, we have Pluto's poisonous heart. Back in 2015, it was revealed that Pluto's heart-shaped sea is actually filled with poisonous ice. It's made up of frozen carbon monoxide and methane. This is of course poisonous to humans. But what's interesting is that the icy mountains on Pluto are made up of water ice bedrock. So scientists believe that the carbon monoxide and methane ice are found on the surface above the bedrock. I actually found a really funny meme that's like, Pluto's heart-shaped sea is filled with poison after NASA kept rejecting it as a planet. In our third spot, we have the toxic meteorites. So turns out that when you heat up meteorites on Earth, they'll release pretty toxic water. This water is filled with sulfur, arsenic, selenium, tellurium, cadmium, antimony, and mercury. Mercury and sulfur having the highest concentration. And for some reason, scientists are trying to find a way to purify meteorites' water. Why? Are they thinking of like bottling it up and then selling it for a stupid amount of money, being like, this is a cure-all, it's from space? I don't know, probably. Seems like it. In our second spot, we have the moon dust. Moon or lunar dust is made up of very tiny and sharp toxic particles. The particles are 50 times smaller than a strand of human hair, and if inhaled, it can stay in your lungs for months. The longer the particles stay in your lungs, the more dangerous it is. Long-term exposure can destroy lung and brain cells. In fact, a number of astronauts have gotten very sick off of this dust. When the Apollo astronauts returned from the moon, they had moon dust all over their spacesuits. It made their throat sore and eyes water. The particles are so fine, but they're sharp like glass, so it felt like they were constantly breathing in sharp pieces of glass. Not fun. And in our number one spot today, we have the cyanide. In 2012, NASA's Cassini spacecraft spotted a weird cloud on Saturn's moon Titan. After conducting a number of tests on it, they realized that this Egypt-sized cloud is made up of cyanide gas, poison that on Earth is used to kill rats and even whales. That's just insane to me. Now this cloud is actually composed of hydrogen cyanide ice, which is weird because at this location on the moon, it should be too warm for the chemical to condense into ice. But I guess not, so that's kind of freaky. The discovery suggests that the air above Titan is much cooler than scientists previously thought. Scientists are still studying this to get a better understanding of what's going on up there. Starting off this countdown, we have the Dropa Stones. In 1938, archaeologist Dr. Chipute led an expedition near the Bayan Har Mountains in China. That's when they came across some interesting caves. These caves held evidence that ancient life once lived in them. After searching the caves, they found weird discs buried under thick layers of dust. These discs resembled phonograph records. Researchers dated them to be over 10,000 years old. Now, they didn't play music like a typical record, but instead they had hieroglyphics carved into them. When studied, it told a story about a spaceship that crashed into the mountains. Aboard the spaceship were people that called themselves the Dropa. Then later on, the discs were sent to Moscow for further studying. That's when they were placed on this special turntable, and the discs would vibrate or hum in a weird rhythm, as if an electric charge was passing through them. After that, research on the discs stopped. Or some believe research continued and they found/contacted alien life, which they just didn't tell the public. Either way, this is said to be one of the most mysterious artifacts in the world. In our ninth spot, we have the alien. And guys, here's just your little friendly reminder to hit that thumbs up button. In 2017, a man in Cusco made a pretty terrifying discovery in the southern desert of Peru. The artifact he found looks exactly like a tiny mummified alien head. An X-ray concluded that the skull had very alien-type features. The skull had angled eyelids with shallow eye sockets, 2 nostrils, and a narrow slit-type mouth. Now, whoever was in possession of the skull actually covered it in a type of clay, so that's what you see on the top of it, which makes it appear to look more like an alien. Researchers discovered that it is indeed a real skull, but they don't know what it belonged to. So it may just be that this skull belonged to a real-life alien from space. Moving on to number 8, we have the Wedge of Aiud. Back in 1974, construction workers in Romania were working in a village in Aiud when they came across some pretty weird objects. These objects were buried 30 feet in the sand by a river. 2 of the objects were bones from mastodons, which are very distant relatives of an elephant. I mean, that's cool and all, but the thing that really caught their attention was this mysterious wedged-shaped object that was located by the bones. Stones. This object contained 89% aluminum, 6% copper, and a total of 12 elements altogether. Here's the thing. Aluminum was discovered around 1825, yet this wedge lay next to bones that are from 11,000 years ago. The timeline just doesn't add up. The wedge itself is theorized to be around 10,000 years old. People believe that this object couldn't have existed way back then. An aeronautical engineer stated that this object looks exactly like a piece of a landing gear for landing aircrafts. This has left researchers to believe that aliens crashed their craft from space maybe 11,000 years ago. In our 7th spot, we have the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is a piece of a stone slab found in 1799. It has a message carved into it written in 3 different types of scripts. You got ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, Demotic scripts, and ancient Greek. This stone is the key to decipher Egyptian scripts. In 1814, British scientist Thomas Young started studying the stone and made some progress on cracking it. But it wasn't until 1822 to 1824 that the hieroglyphic code was finally cracked. This was done by French linguist Jean-François Champollion. It's hypothesized that the slab was created in Egypt in 196 BC, but we still don't know who created it. Now, this one is more of a conspiracy, but it's actually thought that the Rosetta Stone was made by aliens, and they delivered it to us from space. Obviously, there's no solid evidence to support this. In fact, archaeologist Paul Wasson believes the Rosetta Stone has lessons to teach us about creating a message that will allow us to communicate with aliens. Because we can't just assume that aliens speak English. In our 6th spot, we have the UFO tooth wheel. This is another artifact that is said to have come from aliens in space. So basically, back in the day, a Russian man was using coal to heat his home when he saw something sticking out of a piece of coal. He reported his findings, and researchers said it looked like a tooth wheel to some device. After tests were run on it, it was discovered that it was composed of 98% aluminum and 2% magnesium. Now remember what I said before? Humans discovered how to first make aluminum in 1825. But the piece of coal this artifact was found in was 300 million years old. So how is that even possible? In fact, the tooth wheel resembles parts that we currently use in microscopes and electronic devices. Again, back in the day, they didn't have any of those devices, so what the heck? Scientists are still running tests on this object to one day figure out who created it and figure out what its original purpose was. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the iron beads. Back in the day, it was found that ancient Egyptians created iron beads. They were carefully hammered into thin sheets, and then they would roll these into tubes. Then they would string them together and make a necklace. While studying them, they found the necklaces were over 5,000 years old. It was also revealed that the beads were made out of pieces from meteorites, and then they would hammer that down. Not only that, but it was revealed that the Egyptians had a more advanced understanding of metalsmithing than we originally thought. Moving on to number 4, we have the valuable meteorite. There's a meteorite out there that is more valuable than gold. It was April 23rd, 2019, and a weird colorful orb flew across the skies of Costa Rica. It was orange and green in color. This object was about the size of a washing machine. And then, just like that, it broke up into pieces that got scattered between 2 villages. One of the pieces was discovered by a woman named Marcia Campos Munoz. She heard the rumble and saw something crash down on her property. She was one of the few people to find a piece of this meteorite. Now, meteorites show up all the time on Earth, so what's so special about this one? Well, it turns out they belong to a rare class called carbonaceous chondrites. They formed when the solar system was still developing. It's believed that these pieces of meteorites will help us figure out what early solar system life was like. Moving on, at number 3, we have the ancient battery. Back in 1936, outside of Baghdad, a weird discovery was made. They discovered a small clay jar with an iron rod hanging in a copper cylinder in it. This was then soldered shut and sealed with asphalt. Upon analyzing it, it was discovered to produce small amounts of electricity. In fact, researchers said it looks like an ancient battery. However, we still don't know who created this and what its purpose was. But many people believe that this was a battery from an alien spacecraft that crashed down on Earth several thousands of years ago. Aliens are said to be very advanced species, so it could be that they figured out batteries and electricity way before humans ever did. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Hypatia stone. In 2013, a weird stone made its way to Earth from space. This stone has managed to leave scientists baffled. They claim it's unlike any other extraterrestrial rock ever found. In 2015, while analyzing the stone, they found it was not part of a meteorite or comet. So they were puzzled as to where it came from. Researcher Jan Kramer said, and I quote, "The stone's matrix contains a high amount of very specific carbon compounds, called polyaromatic hydrocarbons, or PAH, a major component of interstellar dust, which existed even before our solar system was formed." Meaning, this stone is super old. Like, it was around before the sun and planets had formed. It's mind-blowing, and they still haven't found out all about it.